Hello, everyone. My name is Francis Donald, and I'd like to welcome you to this 24th session in a series of webinars on sacred number and geometry. The first 23 sessions are available on makara.us. If you have any questions about the GoToMeeting interface, feel free to text VL. If you'd like to add your name to the list of readers, hey, we can always use more readers. And don't be surprised if you find yourself just called upon today. This will be the second to last in this series of webinars on sacred number and geometry. Though I will be starting a new series on core concepts or core ideas related to theosophy in June of next year. That'll be the same third Sunday as we do now. Okay. Just a moment. Let me get back here.
I didn't see any hands go up for readers, so if you readers really quick want to put your hand up and I'll mark you down for later, okay? Leave your hand up, I'll put it down when I get you. Thanks.
Okay. During the last webinar, we took a look at the number 9 and analyzed this awesome figure called the nonagon. Today, we'll take a look at the number 10 and the Tetractys. Like the number 8, the symbols we use to represent the number 10 tells us a great deal about its nature. The vertical line stands for the primary progenitor of spirit beyond form. The 0 is symbol of the cosmic egg, the Hiranyagarbha, the divine feminine. Together they form the great androgyne, which contains all phenomena. Verse 3 of stanza 3 in the Secret Doctrine says it best. Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill and drop the non-eternal germ, which condenses into the world egg. You see how that relates to the number 10? Okay, numerologically, 10 reduces to 1, suggesting that 10 represents what the Pythagoreans call a higher unity wherein the 1 is unfolded. For the ancient Greeks, 10 was the perfect number, a belief also taught by DK. 10 is both the number of fulfillment and of new beginnings. The Pythagoreans believed 10 represented, well, let's get a reader for this.
Okay. Clesia, please go ahead.
Gallo,
Hi. Go ahead, Clesia.
the nature of number itself, because all reckons to it, and when arrived at all, returns to the monad. The decade is both heaven and the world, because the former includes the latter. Being a perfect number, the decade relates to age, power, faith, necessity, and the power of memory. It is unwearied because, like God, it is tireless.
Thank you, Clesia. The Pythagoreans divided the heavenly bodies into 10 orders. They also stated that the decad perfected all numbers and comprehended within itself the nature of odd and even, moved and unmoved, good and ill. The Greeks believed that there were actually only 7 numbers, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9. In their philosophy, 1 wasn't considered to be a number because it was synonymous with the Godhead, and thus contained all other numbers within it as potential. Iamblichus says about oneness. Let's get a reader for this. You don't have to read the, and by the way, all through this, you don't have to read the book title and author at the end. Go ahead.
Please go ahead, Michael.
That shining point by its light has dominated all that is in creation, and by its effectiveness has penetrated every object of the phenomena. All that we have attributed to the universal nature issues out from it.
Thanks, Michael. For Schweller de Lubitsch, a 20th century esoteric Egyptologist, the term shining point is the literal symbol for the number 1. He says, 1 is abstract and only becomes concrete when it becomes 10. Thus, esoterically, 10 is the true first power of 1, the second power being 100. Here, Lubitsch is using the term power to mean a fall into generation. 2 also was not considered to be a number by the ancient Greeks. Rather, it was seen as representing the primary conception of difference or polarity, the prototype of matter. And finally, rather than a number in its own right, the Greeks considered 10 to be the canon for the all-ordering 1. The canon for the all-ordering 1. Also, the most perfect boundary for number, called receptacle, and among the muses, Urania. Interestingly, Urania was the granddaughter of Uranus, the final or 10th synthesizing planet. Deca was the Greek word for 10, dasha for receptacle, and the two were considered as part of one concept. For this container holds the 2 parent numbers and their 7 children, the whole family of divine archetypes. The ancient Greeks often compared and contrasted 1 and 10, thus giving us a better philosophical understanding of both. For instance, they believed that whereas the monad was the source of all knowledge, the decad was responsible for the ability to remember. We can see the connection here, for there's no knowledge without memory and no memory without knowledge. Whereas oneness was seen as the father, the Pythagoreans believed that 10, not 2, was the all-embracing, and yet at the same time, all-limiting mother. This is why the symbol for 10 is the circle with the diameter. Verse 7 of stanza 3 in the Secret Doctrine addresses the duality created by this diameter, by crossing the circle. Can we get a reader for this short verse?
Leah, please go ahead.
Behold him lifting the veil and unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones and turns the upper into a shoreless sea of fire, and the one manifested into the great waters.
Thanks, Leah. The Pythagoreans also described 10 as having an ever-flowing nature. It encompasses, they believed, all things within itself, both solid and plane, even odd, perfect numbers, and prime numbers, all of which we have to remember had deep significance in this greatest of all mystery schools, certainly greatest in Greece. The exalted regard given the number 10 in ancient times can be summed up by Philolaus, who gave us this in his writings. Could we get a reader for this?
Please go ahead, Walter.
The activity and the essence of the number must be measured by the power contained in the notion of 10. For this power is great, all-embracing, all-accomplishing, and is the fundament and guide of the divine and heavenly life as well as human life.
Thanks, Walter. Good to have you with us. Okay, this phrase, as well as human life, is particularly important, for as the divine feminine 10 was God immanent and unfolding of the one, or God transcendent. 10 makes 1 accessible. Okay, 10 has some interesting mathematical qualities. For example, 10 is the sum of the first 3 prime numbers, 2, 3, and 5, of the first 4 numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and of the square of the first 2 odd numbers, 1 squared plus 3 squared. It is also, if we add 1 plus 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, we get a sum of 55, which numerologically reduces to 10 and 1. Squaring the first 5 numbers, 1 plus 4 plus 9 plus 16 plus 25, also gives us 55. Squaring all the numbers 1 through 9 gives us 385, which is 7 times 55. Now, the word for 10 in Greek is hen, the letters of which add to 55. Now, if we look at 55 as the 5 fingers of each hand, we see a correlation with the origins of the word 10. For example, the English word 10 derives from the Indo-European dachem, which means 2 hands, 5 plus 5. In fact, many languages derive their words for the number 10 from our 10 fingers. Among them are the Sanskrit dasa, the Greek deka, the Latin decim, and the German zen, from which came the English 10. The fact that 10 is a perfect number is inherent to the potency of the magical properties of the hands, whether used as mudras, as means of blessing, or in magical work. For no matter how the hands are presented, the potency of 10 is always present. Michael Schneider tells us 10 represents a synergy, a whole greater than the sum of its parts, beyond the threshold of number itself, the all-inclusive perfection. We find this concept expressed in DK's teachings. He says, well, let's get a reader for this.
Okay. Anne, please go ahead.
The numerical significance of the numbers must be studied. This time they are hid in the number 10, or 3 cycles of 3 lesser periods, each making 9, and 1 synthesizing period leading up to the consummation of 1 period within the greater cycle. This is signified by the 10 of relative perfection.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Now, he uses the term relative perfection to denote the end of a cycle. The next cycle of 10 will, a greater perfection will unfold. Now, we find much the same teaching applied to the development of the planetary logi. DK says, they are 7-fold in evolution and in time, 9-fold during obscuration, and 10-fold at dissolution. The dissolution here meaning final synthesis. He illustrates this point in this description of the solar logos. 1, the 7 sacred planets of the solar system. 2, the 2 which are hid, which are the synthesizing planets. And 3, the 1 final synthesizing planet, the sun. 7 added to 1 make 10. I find this last statement, 7 added to 2 added to 1 make 10, very telling. Obviously, we can add 7 and 2 and 1 together without DK's help. I think he's here emphasizing the progression of the 7 of form into the 9 of obscuration to the 10 of final synthesis. So, what is the philosophical difference between 1 and 10? It can be summed up in these 2 symbols. We get a further clue from Hermes' Book of the Keys, as quoted in The Secret Doctrine. Can we get a reader for this?
Yes, Iris, let me unmute you. Please go ahead.
10 is the mother of the soul, for life and light are therein united, says Hermes. For number 1 is born of the spirit, and the number 10 from matter, chaos, feminine. The unity has made the 10 the unity.
Thank you. Okay. Notice that Hermes says that 10 is born from matter, suggesting that 10 is a consummated goal on the path of return, not that it is the number of matter. We have an even more esoteric teaching from the 5th verse of the 4th stanza of Zan in the Secret Doctrine. It reads, 1, Adi Sanat, the number, for he is one. 2, the voice of the Lord Svabhavat, the numbers, for he is 1 and 9. Okay, the number and the numbers. The voice of the Lord is the Logos, whose number is 1 and 9. For 1 is ever the synthesizing agent, and the voice, the sound, the cosmic Om, is the means whereby this synthesis is achieved. This is why 10 is called perfection. 1 is beyond perfection because it is beyond any qualitative description. Whereas 10 is the divine prototype for humanity, or humankind, called Adam Kadmon, perfection in manifestation. Secret Doctrine clarifies this idea. HPB says, well, actually, we're going to need 2 readers. When the screen changes, just shift to the next reader, and you can assign those readers now.
For the 10 limbs of...
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Let me just say, I'm going to go with you first and then Asha next. So, Asha, stand.
Go ahead, Scott.
Okay. For the 10 limbs of the heavenly man are the 10 sephiroth. The first heavenly man is the unmanifested spirit of the universe, and ought never to be degraded into microprostospus, the lesser face or countenance, the prototype of man on the terrestrial plane.
Some pages later, HPP goes on to say,
the deity, the ever-invisible presence, says the Zohar, manifests itself through the 10 sephiroth, which are its radiating witnesses. The deity is like the sea from which outflows a stream called wisdom, the waters of which fall into a lake named intelligence. The 10 sephiroth correspond to the limbs of man. When I framed Adam Kadmon, the Elohim are made to say, the spirit of the Eternal shot out of his body like a sheet of lightning that radiated at once on the billows of the 7 millions of skies, and my 10 splendors were his limbs.
Thank you both. With 10, we have the introduction of the 0, also called the cipher. Cipher has a very interesting history. It's usually attributed to the Arabs, but HBB differs with this. The following passage gives us a taste of the writing style of Blavatsky. Hopefully some of you will get hooked. I certainly did. You can notice how different it is than the way DK writes. And she uses this style throughout the Secret Doctrine. Could we get a... Gabrielle, are you with us today? No?
Okay, hold on. I'm going to go to Malia because she had a comment as well.
Go ahead.
So let me go ahead with your comment, please, Malia, and then you can be our reader, please.
Francis, you mentioned the word Om, and it occurred to me that numerologically Om is 10. The O is 6 and the M is 4.
Oh, that's interesting. Uh-huh. And also just if we think of it's using the 2 characters differently than they're used in the 1 and the 0. But the M is often related to ma, or the whole feminine principle, and the O in sound is related to the masculine. So here we have a little shift from the way that the 10 is described, masculine and feminine, but just the two letters also have that masculine feminine quality. Thanks for that point, though. It's interesting about them, adding to 10 in that way, the way that you mentioned. So would you like to read for us?
Sure thing. In view of this circular form, the 1 issuing from the 0, or the egg, or the male from the female in the androgyne, how do you say that? Androgyne?
Androgyne, I believe.
Androgyne? Okay. It is strange
well, maybe it's gyne, I don't know. After all, it's gynecology, so I don't know which it is.
Okay, androgyne. It is strange to find a scholar saying, on the ground that the most ancient Indian manuscripts show no trace of it, that the ancient Aryans were ignorant of the decimal notation. The 10, being the sacred number of the universe, was secret and esoteric, both as the unit and cipher, or 0, the circle. The Arabs, credited with inventing the decimal system, had their figures from Hindustan and never claimed the discovery for themselves. As to the Pythagoreans, we need but turn to the ancient manuscripts of Boethius' geometry, composed in the 6th century, to find among the Pythagorean numerals the 1 and the 0 as the first and final ciphers. The Jewish Kabbalistic sephiroth, sephrim, were taken from the word cipher, not in the sense of emptiness, but the reverse, that of creation by number and degrees in their evolution. And the sephiroth are 10, or circle with a vertical diameter. Therefore, the wisdom of God is contained in numbers, sephrim or sephiroth, for sephir, or S-P-H-R-A, when unvoweled, means to cipher. And therefore also we find Plato stating that the deity geometricizes in fabricating the universe.
Thank you. That was difficult reading, and you did a wonderful job. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The cipher was also often used to create blinds when describing especially great lengths of time, like manvantaras. The numbers given would be correct, the numbers, but the zeros or ciphers were added or deleted to hide, to blind the exact time periods being described. Now, HPB's quote, "The 10 limbs of the heavenly man, or the sephiroth," unquote, is a description of the Kabbalistic tree of life. We've looked at each sephiroth individually. Now let's consider it in terms of the system as a whole. This 10-in-1 unified system illustrates the Greek concept of dasa, or container, 10 as a unity that is more than the sum of its parts. Based on the Kabbalah, the tree of life, which can be approached both involutionally and evolutionally, is a cosmological model of mathematical archetypes that unify the divine creative process in successive stages. For those who immerse themselves in the system, it provides a path for conscious self-integration and evolution. It is made up of 10 potencies, 9 of which we have briefly studied in these webinars. They are crown, wisdom, understanding, mercy, power, beauty, victory, glory, and the 10th and lowest sephiroth, which we'll look at today, is called kingdom. In addition to their descending order, the sephira are arranged in 3 vertically significant columns, commonly called severity, mercy, and mildness, but esoterically called structure, or form building, on the left, dynamic force, or energy, on the right, and consciousness in the middle. There are 3 sephira in the form column, 4 in the consciousness column, and 3 in the energy column. 343, we discovered, is the most significant number in theosophy. It is, for instance, 7 times 7 times 7, which is the number of the planetary logos, 777, and a deeply esoteric indicator of the midway point. We looked at this in depth in one webinar on the number 4. This figure, derived from the Vesica Pisces, shows the importance of 343 to the creative process. Occultists relate these 3 columns to the 3 channels of Kundalini, called the Sushumna, Ida, and Pingala. The Tree of Life is also divided horizontally into the 3 and 7. The 3 causal sources, one for each column, much like the 3 synthesizing logi of Theosophy, and the 7 manifested archetypes. The paths that connect the sephiroth form a caduceus-like involutionary and evolutionary pattern. So, the number 10 most aptly applies to the system as a whole, but also applies to the 10th sephiroth counting up, which represents the achievement of perfection, and the 10th sephiroth counting down, called Malkuth. Malkuth means kingdom. It is associated with the realm of matter, earth, and relates to the physical world. It's important not to think of the sephiroth as unspiritual. Even though Malkuth is the emanation furthest from the divine source, it is still on the tree of life, and therefore has its own unique spiritual qualities. Kether, the highest sephiroth, is in Malkuth, and Malkuth is in Kether. They both participate in that central pillar. Just as 1 is in 10, and 10 is in 1. As the receiving sphere of all the other Sephiroth, Malkuth gives tangible form to the other emanations. It's like the negative node of an electrical circuit, being the node towards which the emanations from the Sephiroth flow and are drawn. The divine energy comes down and finds its expression on this plane. And our purpose as human beings is to turn that energy around and bring it back up the tree of life. Now, let's take a look at how the number 10 relates to the Tarot. The 10th major arcanum is called the Wheel of Fortune. Its fundamental meaning is completion of a cycle, or the closing of a circle. The Hebrew letter, Kaf, which means core, is associated with the act of grasping or closing a hand. Jupiter, the Lord of Fortune, is closely associated with this arcanum. As the ruler of cycles, this arcanum represents the forces of involution and evolution. Exoterically, the Wheel of Fortune is associated with luck and chance, but esoterically, the wheel represents the inexorable working out of the law of periodicity. This law stands in sharp contrast to the energy represented by the 4 animals gracing the corners of the arcanum, for they represent the fixed signs, the fixed eternal modes of the one reality. They stand beyond the reach of the wheel and the apparent changes that take place on it. Paul Foster Case gives an esoteric description of the wheel's nomenclature. Can we get a reader for this?
Yes, let's go back to Ecclesia, please.
The wheel is the symbol of the whole cycle of cosmic expression, and also an emblem of any particular series of events. Its center or pivot is the archetypal world. The inner circle is the creative world, the middle circle is the formative world, and the outer circle the material world. The central circle is the same as the life breath, 10 times repeated on the dress of the fool.
You can see the same wheel down there on the fool. Okay, appropriately placed on the formative wheel, the 3 yogic gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, are given through their alchemical equivalents, mercury, sulfur, and salt. In keeping with the theosophical meaning of the number 10, there's also a symbol for dissolution, which is almost identical to the symbol of Aquarius at the bottom spoke of the same formative wheel. The downturned golden snake represents the radiant life energy, or foha, as it descends into the realm of form. This symbol, as well as the element Mercury, relates this arcanum to the first arcanum, for this is the energy that descends through the magician to his garden. We see Hermes Anubis rising on the right into the higher levels of consciousness. His jackal head represents human intellect. The Sphinx stands triumphantly atop the wheel and represents the true self standing behind and beyond the veil of personality. It holds the key to the riddle of existence, the experience of life itself. Like the four animals, it remains motionless as the wheel turns. And like the Greek conception of the number 10, it stands for soul memory, which is able to glean from the whole span of lifetimes the understanding needed to fill the purpose of its many incarnations. On the wheel, we see the letters T-A-R-O. The final T completes the cycle. Note the symbolic parallel to the Ouroboros. Depending on where one begins to read these four letters, they spell Rota, Tero, Orat, and Ator. Ator was an old Latin form of Hathor. Amazingly, these four words form a primitive sentence, which will be translated into the wheel of Tarot speaks the law of Hathor, which is the law of nature. This is very much connected with the whole concept of 10, because 10 is the precipitation of the law of nature, and it also speaks of the cycle. Okay, astrologically, we see the culmination of a tenfold cycle in Capricorn, the 10th sign of the zodiac, wherein GK tells us the second great gate, quote, opens the door into the life of the spirit, into the life of the kingdom of God, the life and purposes of the hierarchy of our planet. You can't help but imagining the 10 here moving to 1. In Capricorn lies the great mystery of the Makara, the winged dragon of wisdom. Could we get a reader for this HBB quote?
Yes, please, Michael, go ahead. You're on self-mute. There.
Okay. It becomes the task of the fifth hierarchy, the mysterious beings that preside over the constellation Capricornus, Makara, or crocodile in India as in Egypt, to inform the empty and ethereal animal form and make of it the rational man. In Egypt, the defunct man, whose symbol is the pentagram or the five-pointed star, the points of which represent the limbs of a man, was shown emblematically transformed into a crocodile. He becomes the dragon of wisdom, or Manas, the human soul. Suffice it to say that as the sign of Makara is connected with the birth of the spiritual microcosm and the death or dissolution of the physical universe, its passage into the realm of the spiritual. So the Dayan Chauns, called in India Kumara, are connected with both.
Thanks, Michael. GK says about this 10th sign, Capricorn gives us the picture of the triumphant initiate, the unicorn of God, with its one horn out thrust like a single spear upon his brow instead of the two horns of the scavenging goat. Notice again the connection between 10 and 1 here. Okay, let's take a look at the number 10 in religion and mythology. Hindu texts state that Vishnu, the sustainer, will reincarnate 10 times. 9 of his incarnations have already passed. At the end of the Kali Yuga, which we are now in, he will appear riding a great white horse, symbol of the purified vehicle. In the Old Testament, there were 10 plagues in Egypt. The 10th was death or dissolution. This was shortly followed by the 10 Commandments. There were 10 generations from Adam until Noah. All these represent cycles or containers. And for the 10 Commandments, it's a container, right? There are 10 spheres or emanations of the Ayin Sof, the highest god of occult Judaism. There are 10 archangels and 10 names of God, 100 in Islam, the first and highest beyond not only speaking, but beyond knowing. Jesus healed 10 lepers. He also taught the parable of the 10 maidens who took their lamps to meet their bridegrooms. The Holy Spirit descended on the apostles 10 days after the ascension of Jesus. The Sikhs are monotheists, but they believe the word of the one God was spread by 10 great gurus. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus wandered 9 years, and in the 10th returned home. In the Iliad, Troy was besieged for 9 years and fell in the 10th. The Mayans built 10-stepped pyramids, for 10 represented the cycle of life and death. The ancient Chinese believed that there existed 10 suns that appeared in turn in the sky during the Chinese 10-day week. Each day, the 10 sons would travel with their mother, the goddess Zi-He, to the Valley of the Light in the east. There, Zi-He would wash her children in the lake and put them in the branches of an enormous mulberry tree called Fu Sang. From the tree, only one sun would move off into the sky for a journey of 1 day to reach the Mount Yansu in the far west. Also in China, the cross represents the number 10, symbolizing the totality of all numbers. In science, string theory postulates a 10-dimensional universe in which each of the dimensions of space, length, width, and height, are threefold, plus the dimension of time. Okay, let's get into our analysis by taking a look at the Tetractys, especially revered by the Pythagoreans. Along with the cross and the swastika, this is one of the most celebrated geometric figures ever to come down to us. So, DK describes the first step of his recommended analysis simply as its exoteric consideration, line, form, and color. At this point, we're not looking for meaning or significance, but rather for tabulation of physical attributes. I'd love to have you participate. Just raise your hand when you think of a physical attribute and briefly describe a single attribute. Your observation may seem obvious, like the ones listed here. That's fine. Any ideas that help us to physically define this figure are useful. The Tetractys comes in 2 versions. Both are philosophically relevant, but to narrow our focus, we'll concentrate on this version of the figure. Actually, the Tetractys itself doesn't have the connecting lines, but I find them extremely useful. The Tetractys is just the 10 points. Okay, I'll start. By the way, as others and I describe these attributes, consider preparing for the next step of our analysis by imagining the possible meanings and significance of what's being described. Otherwise, this segment doesn't have all that much use. It's the point is to pitch it into meaning and significance. And they really can act, these physical attributes really can act as a way of stimulating your imagination. You may even want to jot down the ideas that occur to you in order to share during the next segment of the analysis. Okay, The tetractys is made up of 4 horizontal lines, or rows of points, with each row adding 1 to its sum. Thus we have 1 point in the first row, 2 in the second, 3 in the third, and 4 in the fourth. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, of course, equals 10 points. If we connect these 10 points, we create a closed figure with 9 equilateral triangles, 6 pointing up and 3 pointing down. Okay. Any further observations? What other physical characteristics do you see? Yeah, Biel.
Helen says 13 triangles, 3 with the apex pointed down and 10 pointing up.
Well, interestingly, there are 13 triangles, but not as you see them here on your screen now. I mean, if you just count the bottom row, 1 up, 1 up, 1 down, 1 up, 1 down, 1 up. That's 5. And then you have 1 up, 1 down, 1 up. That's 8. 9. And then you have 1 at the top. That's 10. I'm sorry, 5, 3, and 1. That's 9. I was thinking of the points. So you have 5 in the bottom, 3 in the top, and 1 at the top. However, as you'll discover, there are, in fact, actually 13. But I'll need to use my illustrations to show how that works.
Okay.
I don't. If anybody else sees 13 from this figure, I would love to know. Okay.
All right.
So
Scott has his hand up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
Sure. Well, the 13 triangles I see are the 9 that are made up of 1 equilateral triangle each. Then you have 3 upward pointing ones that are made up of 4 triangles each.
Very good.
You have
That's
1
exactly right.
10 triangles.
So that makes 12, and then where's the 13th?
The entire figure.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I have an illustration that will illustrate that. Now, it's interesting. Here's an example of, and I would have pushed this agenda earlier had I realized its importance. But here we have 13 triangles. 13 is a feminine number, right? Very deeply feminine number. And here we have the second logos, the circle with the diameter, the divine feminine, represented by the Tetractys. So that's just an example of how to connect what's being observed with possible meaning and significance. Thanks, Scott. Anything else?
Well, you can look at it as you have 9 triangles that are singular, and 3 of them that are made up of 4. That's 12 and 9, and the one that's total, the entire figure, gives you a total of 22.
Oh, I see. So you're double counting the 4s. Yeah, interesting. And 22, of course, is also an extremely feminine number, being even 2 2s. So,
and and the cube that's in there, too, of course. The 3-dimensional
That's
cube.
right.
It's made up of the...
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to cut you off because I don't want you to suck up all the observations here.
Okay, that's not
Let's
possible.
stick with just one observation, which, I asked you to make other observations. So, but anyone else?
Yes, we have a couple, but first let me read a couple of them, okay? Helen says there is a hexagon in the center, and Suzanne also said that. There's a hexagon within the triangle.
Yeah, very important part of this. Yeah. Does everybody see that hexagon? All you have to do is not include the outer 3 points, far bottom, left, right, and top, and that's what's left is this hexagon. Right. Any other observations?
Yes. Martin.
Physical attributes. Go ahead, Martin.
Yes, hi. I see 3 diamond forms. If you take the top point and the middle of the central triangle, that creates a diamond, and then the 2 points below the top point are the apex of 2 other diamonds. So I see 3 diamonds.
Yeah, we'll get into that at length, also called parallelograms, but I like diamond better, actually. Yeah, exactly. There's actually many more than that, but they overlap. If you look
I see several more now, yes.
Yeah, there are several more, but discreetly, yeah, and especially the discrete ones that are all pointing upwards. You nailed it with those three.
And
So,
can I suck up one more as to use your term?
oh, I guess. Go ahead. You always work glory hound, you know.
The center of the hexagram obviously is there's an upward pointing triangle that meets at that point and a downward pointing triangle that meets at that point, which I think has this.
Yes, good point. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have physical attributes that they could point out for us?
I don't see anything else right now.
Come on, folks. Take a closer look.
Oh,
okay.
Hold on. Let me get down here. We have here 3 perfect rhombus, and the 3 triangles more, which symbolizing the highest part of the rhombus. That's what Diana added. Oh no, Nicholas added that.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Yeah. Right. And anyone else?
Yes.
Any other thoughts, folks?
Walter, please go ahead.
Oh, yes, and there are 18 unit line segments connecting the 10 points of the figure.
Yes, there sure are. Thank you, Walter. Good observation. Other ideas, folks? Anyone else? That's really good. You know, this figure doesn't have the apparent complexity of, for instance, the nonagon, you know, which you could really describe practically endlessly. You have to almost curtail, you know, and sort of high grade your observations. But so it doesn't have that kind of complexity, but it actually runs even deeper, you know, if we're to believe the Pythagorean mystery school, right? So.
Lynn says that there's an hourglass in the center.
Oh yes, there are. It's composed of an up and a down pointing triangle. Yes, indeed. Okay. Anyone else? Have we done it?
No, Michael, go ahead.
Okay, if you start at the very top point, and if you took a pencil and drew a line down to the left to the very bottom left point, and then across to the bottom right point, up to the next point, left to the center point, and up top to the next point, you can do that all without lifting a pencil from your paper.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, in fact, this is really, it's a closed figure in every way, isn't it? I would imagine, you know, you could easily cover all the lines. See, I actually haven't explored that. I have to look at whether you could cover all. No, I don't think you could. Could you do that? I didn't think to look at that. See if you could cover every line. Maybe not. But good point. Thanks, Michael. Anyone else before we move on?
Malia says, I am being focused on the 3 downward facing triangles, which make a kind of winged figure with a head. Don't know what that means, but it's great.
Oh yeah, well, the 2 bottom triangles are the wings, and the top down pointing triangle would be the head. Yes, down pointing triangle has a couple of connotations, but let's wait on that. Good point. Anyone else?
Iris is adding to what Lynn said earlier. She's saying there's 3 hourglasses in the center that make up the hexagon.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. They're all turned 60 degrees, and they make up that hexagon. Good observation. Anyone else?
That's all I got.
Okay, let's move on. Great work. Thank you. Here's some additional physical attributes. Some are the same as those you've brought forward. I present them again in order to share my illustrations with you. Each of the 3 corner points connects to 2 other points. I'll use the top one there as an example. Right? The 2 inner points on each sideline connect to 4 points. So the left figure shows the inner points, which are the same as the hexagon. And then on the right, you can see that they each connect to 4 other points. And the central point connects to 6 points. So you have 2, 4, and 6 points of connection. There are 7 vertical rows of points containing 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, and 1 points respectively. The central point is located 2/3 the way down from the apex of the figure and 1/3 up from the base. If we draw a horizontal line running through the central point, it divides the figure into 2 segments with 4 triangles above and 5 below. The 9 triangles that make up the tetractys are formed by 6 lines, 3 forming a star at the center, or spokes, and 3 lines of the outer equilateral triangle. Was it Walter? Did you say there were 18 equal lines connecting all the 10 points? It takes 18 lines to connect all the 10 points. Notice that that again adds to 9. So we have a lot of 9-ness going here. There are 3 sets of parallel lines in the tetractys, again giving us 9, which make up all the lines in the figure. There are 3 overlapping equilateral triangles. Here's Scott's point. 3 overlapping equilateral triangles, each made up of 4 smaller triangles. So you see the 3 discrete, or the 3 composite triangles, to the left, above, and to the right of the central triangle, and then the middle one is then all connected. If folded along the lines of the inner down-pointing triangle, is illustrated there at the top, any one of these 3 triangles would create a tetrahedron. There are 13 equilateral triangles in the tetractys. The point made before we even really got into this. And they are, as Scott mentioned, also, and who was it that brought up the point? Was it Fleasy, I believe?
It was Helen.
Helen? Okay. There are 13 equilaterals in the tetractys, 9 discrete, separate, 3 overlapping, as we just discussed, and then, of course, the one that encompasses them all. Okay. The middle row of triangles alternates up, down, up, as does the vertical set of 3 triangles, giving a kind of a subjective cross. A hexagon made up of 3 upward pointing and 3 downward pointing triangles can be traced at the center of the figure, which many of you saw. This hexagon represents an orthogonal view of 3 of the Platonic solids. Additionally, for the 4th, an orthogonal view of the tetrahedron is outlined actually by any one of the triangles. There are 15 overlapping rhombuses or parallelograms or diamonds in the figure. 9 small parallelograms. These are just, they're not, you know, it's strange. If you actually outline all 9, you don't see any of them. So I've outlined 3 discrete ones on the left and then shown how some of them integrate on the right. If you want to see, if you want to separate them out, just follow the color. Like the yellow is very easy to follow around there on the lower right corner. There are also 6 large parallelograms consisting of 2 up and 2 down pointing triangles. Either set of 3 of these large parallelograms makes up all the lines of the Tetractys. So on the left, you can see the red following around the red border, then the blue border, and then the orange border following it all the way around. You can see how just those 3 parallelograms make up the entire figure. And then 3 different, always overlapping of course, the 3 different large parallelograms also make up the figure you can see on the right. Okay, no matter which side of the equilateral triangle we rotate to become the base, the figure appears identical in every way, and all the above listed physical attributes remain identical. That is to say, the inner hexagon as well as all the inner triangles and parallelograms remain the same for each, no matter which way you rotate it. It's the same precise figures. And they have the same orientation and outline. This is a difficult concept to describe. Obviously, it's the same Tetractys if we rotate it. But what I'm stating here is that all these figures that we've described are identical no matter which way you rotate the figure. Okay. There's only one angle to be found in the Tetractys, 60 degrees. Every angle, even the ones not marked, are all 60 degrees. 3 circles can be drawn within and around the figure. The outer circle reveals that the middle point of the Tetractys is indeed the central point of the figure. The Tetractys illustrates the fact that 10 is a triangular number, for if we draw 10 circles around the 10 points, all the circumferences meet, as illustrated. The center of the height of the figure can be found using 2 bisecting lines, as illustrated. This allows for the creation of a cross whose center point stands above the center point of the outer circle's circumference. You see how that works? It's really 2 center points. The center point of the height of the figure and the center point, which can be determined by the circumference, the outer circumference. It's important to remember that none of the lines are part of the Tetractys proper, only the points. Therefore, we are free to draw additional connecting lines in order to gain further insight into the relationship of these 10 points. For instance, if we bisect each of the 6 parallelograms, or diamonds, that have the central point in common, we create a horizontally oriented 6-pointed star. And if we connect every point with every other point, we get this figure. Indeed, this is the method we've used in many of our previous analyses. But to keep things simple, let's stick with these 3 progressive iterations of the Tetractys.
Francis?
Yeah.
Walter says, yes, you can trace over all 18 edges without lifting your pencil.
Awesome.
Or revisiting the edges. And you'll see it later, but he says, see this picture, and he gives you a website.
That's terrific. That's got by me, because often I consider this business of tracing, without lifting the hand, but I didn't do it this time. I'd be curious to see how that's done. Thank you. Okay, analyzing the Tetractys is a very well-worn path. In fact, there are a whole lot of books written on the subject. For instance, for example, in Timaeus, Plato's treatise on Pythagorean cosmology, the central character, Timaeus of Locri, describes how the demiurge divided the world's soul into harmonic intervals. It's really esoteric stuff. Having blended the 3 ingredients of the world's soul, which the Greeks felt were sameness, difference, and existence, into a kind of malleable stuff, the demiurge took a strip of it and divided its length into portions measured by the numbers, forming two geometric series of 4 terms each. 1, 2, 4, and 8, and 1, 3, 9, and 27, generated by multiplying 2 along the left side. See the 1, 2, 4, 8 along the left side. Look at the Roman numerals. Look inside that lambda, that angular figure. 1, 2, 4, and 8. And 1, 3, 9, and 27, generated by multiplying 3 along the right side. This became known as Plato's lambda because of its resemblance to that letter in the Greek alphabet. The system perfectly overlays the Tetractys. Interestingly, the 3 values corresponding to the points in the Tetractys not generated along the 2 descending lines mathematically comply with both multipliers. Here I'm adding the 3 figures. Okay, so for example, the 6 is both 2 times 3 in compliance with the 2 times multiplier of the left-leaning lines, or the left column, and 3 times 2 when complying with the 3 times multiplier of the right column. This same holds true for the 12 and the 18, right? Like as if we take the 4, we go 4 times 3 gives us 12, and if we go back up here, we have 12 as in the addition of 2 3s make 6, 2 6s make 12. Also the 18, 2 9s make 18. So you see how that works. And 1, 3, 9, and 27. Anyway, you get the idea. So it makes it integrated, almost like a magical cube kind of a system. Okay, that's it for my physical attributes. Let's get into the next stage of our analysis, which is divided into 2 parts. We could get a reader for these 2 parts, please.
Sorry, wasn't on. Walter, please go ahead.
A comprehension in the astral or emotional body of its quality, the reaction of a sensitive response to the impact of its qualitative nature. A conceptual consideration of its underlying idea of what it is intended to teach, of the intellectual meaning it is intended to convey.
So we have astral and mental plane here being addressed, right? So thanks, Walter. In the interest of time, we'll consider these 2 steps at the same time. In sharing, you're welcome to speak to either the emotional or conceptual aspects of the Tetractys. So, considering the list of physical attributes as well as those you have brought forth, what quality, significance, and or meaning can we ascribe to the Tetractys? Okay, here's one example each based on quality or significance and on conceptual meaning. The Tetractys is the most revered symbol in Pythagoras' mystery school. They swore oaths by it and wrote invocations based on it. For instance, by the discoverer of the divine Tetractys, the spring of all our wisdom, the eternal root of nature's fount. And then they would swear their oath. Since among Theosophists and Neoplatonists, Pythagoras is recognized as a master of wisdom, we can assume that the Tetractys holds mysteries far beyond anything we might bring to light today. So, with that disclaimer, in terms of significance, the Tetractys fills me with awe because Pythagoras' choice of this figure as the symbol of his mystery school suggests that it may very well be a kind of holy grail of sacred geometry. In terms of conceptual meaning, we can view the causal source of the Tetractys from a vertical perspective as a four-stage progression from 1 to 4, with the cause at the top, and or as emanating from a central source, wherein we have the 9 of plurality, or completion, represented by the outer triangle, with the synthesizing point at the center. Okay. Any further ideas on the quality, significance, and or meaning of the Tetractys? As you're thinking about this, you may wish to consider our list of physical attributes. I'll give you a minute to review. Just raise your hand when you're ready, and Gail will let me know. Thank you.
Well, I had a hand up a minute ago, but it went down, so.
That's the wisest among the group, right there.
So now I have another one. So please go ahead,
Okay,
Walter.
Yes, the Tetractys communicates as above, so below, in that it's a triangle that is formed of smaller triangles.
Say that once more, Walter.
Yes, this figure communicates the concept and energy of as above, so below, because it's a triangle that is formed of smaller triangles that are formed of smaller triangles.
Yeah, so what I'm getting what you say is that that you never, it's like the outer triangle is of the same nature than that each of its component parts.
Yes.
Yeah, so in that sense, you have, and you can also look at it as that peak triangle, the top, the apex, and the entire triangle is the 1 and 10, which is actually the 1 and 9. It's interesting because, you know, we keep shifting from point to triangle here, but in either case, you know, I see the 9 of the inner triangles as enfolded, or that whole idea of the Greek dasa. Deka is the 10, dasa the container. So you have the container as the outer triangle representing the 10th, which hold the 9. So yeah, that's a very important point, Walter. Thank you. Okay, folks. Anybody else?
Helen says, the 7th point in the center of the hexagram both unites all the points and creates the possibility of new forms.
Absolutely. It's interesting, the shift from the apex to the center. And when we're talking about form creation, you definitely want to look at the center of the figure as the seed point. Thank you, Helen. Anyone else?
Yes.
Any other ideas?
Please go ahead, Scott.
Sure. In geometry, what's unique about an equilateral triangle like this is that center point, unlike any other kind of shape of triangle, like a right triangle or genuine or just a generic acute or obtuse triangle, that center point is the center for all of the other points that are measured from the outer points. For us, it is the centroid of this, where the medians of the sides meet at that point. It's also the circumcenter, where the center, where the circle that joins the three outer points in the circle are. It's where the orthocenter is, where the altitudes meet. It's where the angles bisectors meet. They all meet in one center point, and it's only in this kind of triangle where all those points meet. And where the point of gravity is in that triangle is that center point.
Yes, it's very, very important. The first thing you said, that it's equidistant, that it's not equidistant meaning the same distance to every other point, but it's symmetrically, for instance, from the center to each of the outer points is the same. And and its distance to each of the inner six is the same.
And the point from the three outer points through the center point to the opposite side is at a ratio in this triangle only of 1 to 2, which you've already noted. It divides it in proportion of 1 to 2. And that center point.
And again, that's only in this triangle, right?
Yes.
That you get that. Yeah. It all comes together, in a unique way. Subjectively, the center point seems low. It's like, and yet it's strange because all you have to do is count the triangle to realize that even as low as it is, most of the mass is below it. So, if you were to get the actual center of the mass of the triangle, it would be somewhere just below that center point, that you would achieve that. So it's very much a true central point. Any other thoughts, folks?
Yes. Please go ahead, Clesia.
On that center point, if you actually that straight line that you make lift the center point up to the line that's and then to the next line, isn't that like the redeeming quality of this figure, where it actually lifts the lower up into the higher?
Could you say that again, please?
In one of you had a straight line down the center from the top right through the center point to the bottom.
Mm-hmm. So a vertical line, right, going straight down. Yeah.
When you had the cross in the middle there.
Right. Yeah.
Which had the point higher.
Yes.
Another point.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think gives you the redeeming quality from bringing the lower point into the higher point.
Oh, I see what you're saying now. Okay. I didn't get the reference to the center point of the cross. Right. So it suggests, since it has two types of center points, it suggests a movement, an ascending movement from one to the next. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone? Other thoughts?
Oops, sorry. Suzanne says, I'm reminded of the PowerPoint within the Great Pyramid.
Oh, yes, indeed. It would be interesting to see, where the King's Chamber, it would be off to the left of that, but 2/3 down would not be, wouldn't be at way off in terms of that point. And it's strange that I didn't check that out, but yeah. Certainly, on a subjective level, it is without question the power point of this triangle. Okay. Anyone else?
We do, but I would like to make a comment. It reminds me of the I can't think of the term of it, but it's the layers of our consciousness. The fivefold personality, the three parts of the spiritual triad, and then the monadic triangle there at the top.
Right, the Godhead. It's interesting. The Great Pyramid has no cap on it, which would be the same as the top triangle of this. And there are those who believe that it never did, because it's a function of spirit and isn't material. So you can see it, as Biel just said, that you're looking at three levels of personality, soul, monad, for instance, described here. Very good. Anyone else?
Yes, a couple more. Please go ahead, Michael.
Okay. All triangles, no matter what their angles, are structurally stable and strong. Mm-hmm. Within the equilateral triangle, it seems to have an emotional quality that is very Libran to me, where it's all balanced, and like an emotional balance.
Yeah, well, it is literally a balance, isn't it? You would build a balance on this figure, um, just by the outer 3 points. But you can also see the fulcrum on the interior points. The central point would be, how it would shift from one side to the other. So yes, that's really a good observation. It's very Libran in that it can be seen as very Libran in that way, and also just the 1 and 2 together, which is the nature of this. It's an exegesis, a mathematical exegesis on 1 moving into 2, which is this world of spirit encompassing the world of form. Right?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Anyone else? Good stuff here, folks.
Mark,
Yeah, Martin.
please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. This is a fleeting deep impression, or fleeting shallow impression. I see.
You don't have any fleeting deep ones, do you?
No, in a minute. The top triangle and the bottom left and the bottom right jump out at me as in astrological terms, as the 3 father triangles of the father principle is 3. There's 3 father principles and there's 9 mother principles. So all 9 fleetingly represent that Virgoan, and those 3 represent the Leo, Capricorn, and what's the other one? Libra. So basically, they're investigating that more deeply in next June. But there's something very profound there.
Yeah, I see this too. There's something fixed about taking it in a slightly different direction, but I think along the same lines. The 3 corner triangles, the upper one and the bottom corners, have a quality of the fixed, and the center is almost like it's in motion. It's like that wheel we were looking at in the Tarot, and so you have, the mutable and the fixed represented, or the creator and the created. So yeah, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Other thoughts, folks?
Yeah, please go ahead, Scott. You're on self-mute.
There we go. Just a couple of things. I assumed, maybe I missed it, when you were talking about the 1, 2, 3, and 4 levels there, you also brought in the concept of the geometry of it and moving through different planes from a point to one dimension, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions. Is that so?
I did mention that, but it's one of those borderline things. It's physical, but it also has this subjective quality to it too.
There's also the hit I get also looking at this equilateral triangle is that certainly it's stability and archetypal form. So it's law here, it's justice, it's an archetypal, simple, the first shape you can make of 3 lines. But also, when you look at it, I think of it in terms of it like spinning in every different direction. Right? It almost becomes 4-dimensional to me. And you're just spinning that. Not only just spinning the cube in there, but spinning the whole thing. The fact that it starts out so staid and fixed, and yet you're spinning it and moves into other dimensions. It has another world to it, depth to it.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons that I introduced the circles when I show the physical attributes of all these different figures is that none of these figures are static. They're only static as lower mental figures. This is a figure in motion, definitely. So if you were to spin it at high speed, what you would see is those circles, because that's what the tracery would look like. It's a circle. So it's a very good point. Anyone else?
I don't see anything.
Okay, let's move on.
Oops, I lied.
You do that once in a while,
I know. Go ahead, Walter.
Oh yeah. Also in this figure, I see like a an image of reconciling conflict. In other words, if you look at the triangles, 2/3 of them are pointing up, and then 1/3 of them are pointing down, and that makes me think of like the abstract war in heaven, where 1/3 were cast out.
Oh.
And however, there's a synthetic unity and reconciliation here, because you have like the minority downward pointing triangles and the majority upward pointing triangles together, making a unified, beautiful figure. So there's a lot of the bit of prodigal son and the separation, but yet coming back into unity in this figure.
I love that, Walter. You get the gold star today. That's my favorite concept, including the ones I came up with. I love that idea. That, in the at the time of when the Earth moves into becoming a sacred planet, there will be 1/3 that don't make the cut, right? 2/3 will have contacted their souls to the extent that their path is assured, like accepted disciple at whatever level. And that is specifically represented by these up and down pointing triangles. I really think that's a great, and yet that further observation is that it's meant to be. That's how it is. Here it is in the geometry. That's the way it works. I wouldn't be surprised if the law that governs that future event and the law that is, in a sense, exudes from this figure aren't connected in that way. That's just brilliant. Thanks, Walter.
Malia says, I'm hearing Bob Marley's song that has in it, let's get together and be all right. Something someone said triggered that thought.
Yeah, there's something really all right about this, isn't it? The observation that Scott made, that there's 3 overlapping, upward-pointing triangles. It's almost like, and I didn't make this point, I'm surprised to realize, that they're like the Trinity, like the first, second, and third ray, first, second, and third logo. And each of these has, at the center, a down-pointing triangle, right? It's a 3-in-1 ratio, whereas the entire piece has a 2-to-1 ratio, right? So it's interesting, but the overall note of this triangle is that good will dominate, that it will prevail. Just like Bob Marley said on more than one occasion, before he was rubbed out by his down-pointing triangle. Okay. But even being rubbed out is only temporary, right? So anyone else? Last thoughts before we move on?
Yes. Please go ahead, Scott.
Oh, just one going back more to the physical attributes, I suppose, is that the downward pointing triangles in the 9, starting from the top, are in the position of 3, 5, and 7.
Okay, and what do you make of that? Yeah, that's all the odd. Well, it's not the 1, but in other words, you have 2 4s. What?
Well, you just start at the top, stop and go. Top is 1, and then start second row, the second, the third one.
All right.
Was down pointing. Just counting the.
Yeah, it's all the odd. It's not all the odds, but it's 3, 5, 7. Yeah.
It has the steps in masonry, really to that. We've run across it elsewhere. The 3, 5, 7. As steps in and out of, in terms of consciousness. So,
right. Well, certainly in terms of rays, they represent the more concrete, right? The 3 being, in a sense, the that from which the 5 and 7 are generated. So along the masculine line, only the 1 is not represented by that. And of course, it wouldn't be a down-pointing triangle. So yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, folks, I'm going to cut you off because we're now at 3:25. So we need to move it along. Okay, All right. Okay. Though only suggested by the 10 points. Some of this we've talked at length, but you will get the illustrations. Only suggested by the 10 points, the equilateral triangle subjectively dominates the Tetractys. Since we know the triangle will be the symbol of spirit, we can see the Tetractys as representing, for example, a map of the energetic connections within the higher 4 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. In this hypothesis, the down-pointing triangle could represent the sacrificial descent of the upper triangle that shares its baseline. Thus, the first of these descents touches the Atmic plane, which in turn descends to infuse the Buddhic plane. This suggests that the 9 hidden triangles represent consciousness, which infuses the form world represented by the 3 and 7. So, when viewed vertically, the Tetractys suggests the descent of spirit into form. It also suggests each of the 3 dimensions. Let's get up here to this. 0 dimensions for the point, 1 for the line, 2 for the plane, and 3 dimensions for solid objects. So no, I hadn't presented this, Scott, so your point was apropos. In nature, the seed, stem, leaf, and fruit demonstrates this concept. In fact, the word Tetractys means fourfold. Thus, its progression of 4 can symbolize the 4 elements, air, fire, water, and earth, and this was very much a part of the Pythagorean teaching. The solstices, starting with the winter solstice, going to the equinox, the summer solstice and summer equinox, as well as the 4 seasons of the year. Like the tree of life, the Tetractys can be divided into an upper causal 3 and a lower manifest 7. The 3 and 7 are also relevant to the centric perspective. Here, the higher 3 are the 3 points of the outer triangle, which embrace the inner 7 points, and we discussed that to some extent. Thus, acting as the force of creation. In fact, when we consider the central point, the outer triangle, and the inner hexagon respectively, central point, outer triangle, and inner hexagon, we see a metaphor for the creative will of spirit, the will to create, the creator, and that which is created. Of course, the division of 3 and 7 are extremely significant in theosophy. For example, the 3 synthesizing and 7 sacred planets, which are centers in the body of the tenfold solar logos, and the 3 arupic globes and 7 manifest globes that make up the chain. So, we have 2 interrelated and interconnected systems, a top-down system and a within-to-without system. Together, they represent the 10 and 1, the father-mother, or great androgyne of theosophy. The Tetractys is also a model for the tonal system of the 7-step musical scale. For the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 represent the fractional lengths of a vibrating string that produce the musical octave, the 4th, and the 5th. When the numbers of the lambda are used, the string lengths needed to produce every note in the scale are indicated. The Tetractys can be used to illustrate planetary relationships. In Freemasonry, there are a series of hand grips that I am compelled not to illustrate, which unite 10 fingers and are thus considered to be an expression of various aspects of the Tetractys. Okay, let's take a look at the next stage in DK's analysis, which is 4, the stage of the synthetic grasp of the purpose of a symbol, of its place in an ordered manifesting plan, of its true unified intent. This stage is not about attributes. Rather, it has to do with synthesis and unity, synthetic purpose and unified intent. Just as the first stage has to do with the physical plane, the second with the astral, and the third with the mental, this stage suggests we apply our intuition and thus lift our consciousness to even higher levels. Notice, too, that this stage is threefold. One, the stage of the synthetic grasp of the purpose of a symbol. Two, of its place in an ordered manifesting plan. And three, of its true unified intent. So, what is the synthetic purpose or unified intent of the Tetractys? And what is its place in an ordered manifesting plan? If you can answer that question, you could go to the head of the class in Pythagoras' mystery school. It's, as usual, these are huge questions, much bigger than we can hope to fully answer or fully understand. In fact, I'm sure that the answer to this question unfolds according to your level of initiation. There's probably an answer at the level of becoming a master of wisdom that still is relevant to this figure. So, what single purpose characterizes this figure? Any thoughts on this? Take a moment to consider. You'll just let me know when you get a response, but feel free to take your time.
They're all still thinking.
I imagine. This is definitely one of those places that angels fear to tread. Not calling anybody a fool, by the way. But if you have a thought, even if it's just a partial thought, and then we're talking about synthesis, but even if it's not a fully formed idea about possible synthetic purpose of
Well,
this symbol.
we have a couple of intrepid folks here, so
Yeah, right.
Walter, please go ahead.
Yes. I get the overall impression beyond just thoughts and feelings of a flowering, perhaps because back to a visual level, this kind of reminds me a little bit of like a three-petaled flower, like a trillium. And so I'm getting the overall impression of a purpose is that it stimulates flowering, and of all the particular images that come from it related to the Kabbalah and so on, that it's stimulating our growth and stimulating our flowering outward and our drawing upward. And so all those images that this presenting this and all of us being here and contemplating the nature of this helps fulfill that deeper evolutionary purpose as a whole.
That's really good, Walter. Yeah, the Pythagoreans called it the fount of nature. And so, a flowering is, one of the principal elements of that fount. So, excellent. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yes, we have quite a few, but let me read a couple of them first. Lynn says evolutionary development.
Yeah, absolutely.
Malia says the 1 becomes 3 becomes 7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Suzanne says no matter where one may stand upon the representative symbol, we are part of all of it and shall move about it in many ways.
That's very good. Yeah. It does. It suggests many stations, doesn't it? It's kind of like the tree of life in that way. I mean, it's the same 10 sephiroth, really. The tree of life arranges them differently, but these are sephiroth, which are the potencies, or as Malia described them, it was Malia, right?
Yeah, the one
Yeah,
becomes the
describe
three.
them as stations, that we can be, we find ourselves at any given time in our version of a position within this Tetractys. Anyone else?
Oh, yes, several. Please go ahead,
Right.
Cruzia.
So my thought is that it's actually a basis. The 1 and the 10, which is this symbol of, is the basis or the foundation for unlimited expansion.
Mm-hmm. Yes. When you go down into form, there's a that the next level has 15 points, and you could see that as representing the mental plane. So you can extend this infinitely far, but it's all you could say summarized by this 10-point figure.
Yes. And you can actually fold it up into just one triangle.
Mm-hmm. You can fold it into
just into one triangle.
Oh, it'd be interesting. Why don't you nail me a folded piece of paper? I'd be interested to see.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Go ahead, please, Michael.
Okay, if we considered that each one of the triangles represented each of us as a unit of humanity, and we are all interconnected to represent the entire whole of one humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me also leads into the triangles work, which the Tibetan was said was so dear to his heart.
Yeah. It's true. It's a piece. That leads to a very good point, which is when we become a sacred planet, the etheric web of the planet will become triangular. This is a piece of that. And you can't help but imagine that from one point of view, it's the basis of that triangular formation. So and what he says about the triangle is that energy, specifically sacred energy, moves much more quickly through a triangular matrix than through a matrix of squares, which is what we currently are. So you could derive from that this is a kind of a lightning rod that we're looking at here, where the energy is quickly and easily sent forth or disseminated. Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, Scott, please go ahead. You're on self-mute. There you go.
Wait a minute. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. This is, after all, just the simplest picturing in numbers and points of creation through number, which is the essence of all creation comes through number. Plato says that's God geometrizes. This is it in the simplest schematic possible, going from zero, or in a sense, the one about whom naught may be said, in a different perspective, coming out of zero, in a Fibonacci, like a oneness, and then there's this one. And from that, you get oneness and two-ness and three-ness up through 9 until you complete the cycle. This is Ouroboros as well. This is all cycles. This is not only the one of intent of will that comes into form, but it also, in its completion, makes a circle, and that gives you the 10, 1 and 0, which you can do vertically like you did, a circle with a 1 on it. You can also do it horizontally. And if you separate the two of them and put the circle above the horizontal, you have the definition of pi, the circumference divided by the diameter.
Mm-hmm. And there we are, right back to an essential concept, which is, that it's the divine feminine, in the sense that it is the creator, great creator God, God/goddess. Yeah, very good points. Thank you. It's the sum. It is both the sum total of manifestation, but it's much more than that. It's the organizing principle of that manifesting of that manifested reality. It's the law by which it occurs, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And from one point of view, there's really nothing beyond this or outside of it. And this was actually a favorite. What we're doing, folks, is nothing new. Not with this figure. We might have been, breaking new territory with a nonagon, but this has been so widely discussed for literally millennia. But that's for a good reason, And I think all of us get a sense of why it has such profundity. A little inkling, first level kind of stuff. Anyone else?
Yes, we still have a couple in a comment, but let's go to Vera. She's had her hand up for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I see like that there is encoded in the symbol the insurance policy, like the return of all the manifestation, the cycles and everything, it must come back to the original point. And as pointed before, that actually predominantly the number of the triangles pointed upwards is going up. So that's, ensure that return happens.
It's a warranty, if you need.
Yes.
It's a warranty policy. It's interesting. A couple of times DK says, the hardest thing to get across is that if you just do this work, it will happen. Because that's really what you just said, that this describes the energetic pattern that allows us to move back towards our own Godhead, right? And therefore, if we just do the work that's described, it's going to happen, because why would it be any different for you, me, or any other of us? We're all part of it. All of us are in this. You can't get out. So, it's a very good point. Very good point. Anyone else?
Yes, Nicholas, please go ahead.
Greetings. We have here 3 ROMs, which may represent constitution of man on a stage of development. For example, they may represent the 3 vehicles of the soul. And we also see here the 3 triangles, not ROMs, which may represent only sacred vehicle, which have no lower side, have only the upper triangle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point, Nicholas. That the Tetractys is universally applicable, right? You can apply it to, they talk about the macro and the micro prosopas, the greater and lesser face of God in the occult language of theosophy. But the Greeks also recognize that this is, you can apply this to any part of your life, the personality. As Nicholas was just saying, these could be the 3 bodies, the physical, astral, and mental bodies of the personality, and it will be relevant, and the laws will apply if you can discern them from this. If Pythagoras was still alive, I'd join up, that's for sure, because this is basically what was taught. It's a very good point, Nicholas, the applicability of this. Yes, anyone else?
Yes, Jeremy says the
Tetractys.
Yeah, that's symbolizes the full expression of the absolute in manifestation in all existence, creating, sustaining, and destroying from the most subtle to the most dense, from the microcosm to the macrocosm, from the
There it
infinite
is. Yeah.
from the infinite to the most minute particle, embracing all kingdoms of life, consciousness, and light.
Very nicely said. Very nicely said. Yeah. Yeah. It's the Alpha Omega, the Ouroboros. And it also is, it represents cycle, the concept of the cycle, right? Very good. You know, I get a sense that we're actually getting a toehold on this just based on the comments that are being made. Very gratifying. Anyone else?
That's all I see right now.
Okay, well, in the interest of time, let's move ahead. Here's my idea on the synthetic purpose of the Tetractys. Like the second logos, the Tetractys represents the great feminine principle of manifestation, but it not only reveals the numerical principles that determine all that is, it also governs the relationship between these principles. The Tetractys is synergetic and thus governs the fount of nature itself. But this passage from the Kabbalah says it much better than I ever could. The intelligible world proceeds out of the divine mind after this manner. The Tetractys, reflecting upon its own essence, the first unit, productress of all things, and on its own beginning saith thus, once one, twice two, immediately arises a tetrad, having on its top the highest unit, and becomes a pyramus, whose base is a plane tetrad, answerable to a superficies upon which the radiant light of the divine unity produceth the form of incorporeal fire, by reason of the descent of Juno, matter, to inferior things. Hence ariseth essential light, not burning, but illuminating. This is the creation of the middle world, which the Hebrews call the supreme, the world of their deity. It is termed Olympus, entirely light and replete with separate forms. Where is the seat of the immortal gods, Deum Domus Alta, whose top is unity, its wall trinity, and its superficies quaternity. Okay, the final stage in DK's criteria for analyzing a symbol is identification with the quality and purpose of the symbol as it is illuminated by the mind held steady in the light.
Francis,
This final stage, yeah.
sorry, we have one more comment from Jan. The 10,
Go ahead, Jan.
The 10 seems a point of tension extension of the 1, as the mother is a point of extension of spirit, and the figure indicates the nature or provides a map of the relationship between the part and the whole that is of essential identity.
That's very well said, too. Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, so this final stage, which is identification with the quality and purpose of the symbol as it is illumined by the mind held steady in the light, brings into activity the brain as well as the mind. So let's attempt to identify with, rather than just reflect on, the quality and purpose of the Tetractys. We'll take exactly 1 minute to do this, starting now. All right. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. During the next and last session in this series, we'll be taking a look at the numbers 11 and 12, and we'll analyze the 12-sided dodecahedron. That, by the way, is the fifth and only Platonic solid that doesn't fit within the six-sided or the three-sided figure of the Tetractys. It stands in its fiveness in a different kind of place. For those of you who've been following the reading, take a look at the chapters on the numbers 11 and 12 in the Key to the Universe, and on the number 12 in A Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe, which is at the end of the chapter on the number 6, a brief segment on the number 12. Today's visualization is from a Pythagorean invocation. We'll begin and end with an Om. By that pure, holy, four-lettered name on high, nature's eternal fountain and supply, the parent of all souls that living be, by him with faith find oath, I swear to thee. Bless us, divine number, thou who generated gods and men, O holy, holy Tetractys, thou that containest the root and source of the eternally flowing creation. For the divine number begins with the profound, pure unity until it comes to the Holy Four. Then it begets the mother of all, the all-comprising, all-bounding, the firstborn, the never-swerving, the never-tiring Holy Ten, the key holder of all. Okay, that's it for today. Don't forget to throw a few bucks at the Mori Federation at morifederation.com, which will help pay the yearly fee for this GoToMeeting account. Makes these webinars possible. Thanks to Brett, the webinars are available on makara.us. Thank you, BL, again, for your continued invaluable assistance. And thank you all for attending. Hope to see you again at our next and final session in this series, which will be on September 18th. Okay, bye for now.
Goodbye, everyone.